In this video, I'm going to show you how to get started with FocusState, which allows you to control the focus of the keyboard. And then I'm going to show you how you can customize your text fields and secure text fields with different keyboard options to make them easier to use and to navigate between multiple keyboards. Hey, this is Paul Solt from Super Easy Apps. Let's get into the tutorial. We've got a starter app, and if you want to get started, you can go ahead and download that at the link down below. All right, let me just walk you through it real quick. So this is the app. This is actually running on my iPhone. So I've got my iPhone connected over here. And if I tap on here, it's going to give me suggestions. So one of the things that we're implementing is the ability to have all these different suggestions. So if I tap on the name text field, you'll see that it suggests my full name, Paul Solt. I tap that, it auto-completes. There is a next button in the bottom right corner. I can tap that on the keyboard, and then it takes me to the next keyboard text field entry, and that's going to be the email. And so here it's going to suggest a username. I can tap, it's going to suggest my email, and I can tap that and then hit the return button. And then it takes me down to the password prompt automatically. And then down in here, I can type in a password. Now, this button will not activate until I have at least 8 characters, and then it will activate. And once we hit that, it will start the spinning process. And from this point on, you can transition to another screen. So that's what we're going to be demoing, how to work with these different things. One thing to note is when I'm doing a screencast of the secure password field, it's not going to show you any keyboard, so you won't be able to see what I'm typing. That is a security feature built into the QuickTime, which I'm using to show what's on my actual iPhone. So let's learn how to get started with this. And I'm going to take you on a little tutorial. So we're going to first start with FocusState, which is a property wrapper that allows us to choose which elements are focused, and we can set an actual hashable attribute so that we can find the exact text field or secure field that we want to move the keyboard focus to. All right, so all of this code, if you want to follow along, is down here in the link down below. So just click that link. You can get it. I'll send you an email with all of my sample code that includes this starter project. Or if you want to see how we built this, I have another video that you can watch about that. And let's get started. So I've got the project open, and what this is going to look like is I've got a few different projects in here. Let me just minimize some of this. What you're going to see is a begin, end, and demo. So demo is kind of what I showed off, some of the features. And then end is what I'm going to be working on right now. So if you want to see the final result, you can just take a look at that. And then begin is going to be the starter project. So I've already copied the begin and renamed it end. So that's where I'll be starting. And you can follow along with that. I also have a README in there that's going to have a description of how to sort of walk through this and give you a little bit more understanding. So that's what I'm sort of following as I'm guiding you through the different steps that we need to take. Okay, so up first, we've got all of our text fields, and we want to be able to control the focus. So our first goal is to control the focus, and we're going to do that by creating an enum that's going to allow us to manage the focus. So I'm going to call it login focus. You can make this an inner property, but since I'm going to be using this across code files, potentially I may want this to be more public and not private. It's up to you how you want to do it. I'm going to make this hashable, and we're just going to have name, email, and password. So that's going to be our login focus. The next thing that we need to do is in the view that you want to control where the focus or where the keyboard is going to be highlighting, we need to create a focus state. So let's create a focus state, and this is going to be a variable, and we'll call this the focused field for either the focused text field or the focused secure field, since both will be in this demo. In here, we just give it the type. We're going to use the login focus that we just defined up top. And we're going to make it optional because when the keyboard is not active, there's going to be nothing focused. And so that's another way to hide the keyboard if you want to hide it programmatically. After that, the next thing that we need to do is annotate these different things down here with the focused attribute. So we have the ability, there's two different APIs that we can use. We can use a focus condition, which was the original API, and then focus that does the binding will use that focus state property wrapper and create a binding in order to make this work. And so we're going to use this second one here, and then I am going to pass in a binding to our focused field. And then all we have to do is annotate each of these text fields with what they correspond to. So in this case, this will be the name login focus. So we're matching with this, and then we're good to go. All right, if we just want to demo this real quick, we can come down to the bottom here, and I can do a onAppear method. And then in here, we can just set the focus field equal to the name. And doing this, if we were to run the app and take over what's on my iPhone, what we're going to see is that it should bring up the keyboard and focus on the content. Now, if you're working with the simulator, you're not going to see the keyboard by default. So that's one of the reasons why I'm currently demoing this with a real iPhone, because some of these interactions you really have to touch the screen to understand it. And if you never touch the iPhone screen when you're developing an app, you're missing out on some of the nuances that users are going to be frustrated with when they actually have an iCloud account. They've got passwords. They want to autofill. There's all these things that you can't really test on the simulator. And so that's where you need to use a real device to see how they work. Okay, so that's a quick little demo of getting that working. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to just annotate each of these other fields. And if you have multiple fields in your own application, you can go ahead and do this same thing for all of them. And you can add more values to your enum. So here we're going to have, this is our email. And then I'll just come down to our last one. And this is going to be, I don't know why the autocomplete is just like totally giving me random suggestions each time I want to do this. But it's not giving me the same list of attributes here. And so this last one is going to be our password. This is our secure field. And that is how we can go through this. If you want, you can pause this video and you can go in and you can switch it so that it now goes to the password or goes to one of the other fields in your own application. Okay, so after that, we have a little bit of a conundrum, because the way we've designed this text field is I'm not using the standard style for a text field. You'll notice that if I take away, let's just take away all of this right now. This is what the standard UI would look like. And this might not match the design that you're looking for, or this might not match the design that your UX team wants you to implement. And if that's the case, if we want to make this bigger, there is currently no way to create a custom text field style without using a private API. So you can work around this. It's not a totally foolproof method. Like, it would be really nice if you could customize your own text field style without a private API, but I don't know of a way to do that. And if you do, just comment down below, because that would be super cool to see. All of the stuff that I've seen makes it sound like it's not possible. So if we want to customize this, we'll put padding around. The challenge with this, and you'll notice this when you're working with real things, which is why you have to test apps on real devices, is when you tap with your fingers are fat and they're not going to hit exactly where you expect. And when you do that, you're going to miss these text fields. And so I'll be tapping, if I just try and tap on the start of these text fields, I cannot trigger these text fields to start when I tap on this region. And let's just try that here. So I can tap here, here, and here. Nothing changes. The keyboard focus does not move. If I tap right on the word, it goes there. If I tap right on the word, it goes there. And then if I tap in line with that, it will switch. But I have to be very precise, and it's going to match that text field style. So how do we work around this? The one solution that I like so far, and this might change, but is using a tap gesture and to just set the focus. So now that we have the ability to focus, we can make it so that the text field or the secure field is easier to tap by using a tap gesture. Now, the other caveat that we have to keep in mind is that when you use tap gestures, if you have transparent content, it will not tap that by default. It's going to just pass through and go to whatever's behind it. And so these regions on the outside will fail to tap if we don't set up either a clip shape or a content shape. And so this is a really important step in order to fix this bug. So because of that, I'm going to need to customize the tapping for each of these because I need to set the focus to each one, which means that we're going to have to change the way I've structured this. So I have a group here. I'm going to get rid of the group and we're going to rewrite this code. We can refactor it later, but we're going to have to bring the padding, the background, and the clip shape into each of these text fields so that we can customize them properly. So I'm just going to cut this and we'll actually probably just delete all of that code. In this group here, I'm going to get rid of the group. Just get rid of that completely. I can get this to re-lay out by just getting rid of this trailing, and then I'm going to paste in this code. So we're going to add padding, and we're going to do this one at a time. And then let's just get the tap gesture to work. So there's an on tap gesture. We're going to go ahead and do this, press enter. And then in here, all we need to do is set the focused field to, in this case, it's going to be name. Name is the first one that we're working on. Let's go ahead and test this and see how this works. You should be able to test it in this preview as well. So if I tap on email anywhere in this row, that's going to switch. If I want to tap up top, that switches to name. If I tap back and tap on the bottom, that switches. If I tap on the start, it switches. If I tap on the end, you can see that it's tapping. And then I can test it on a real device and sort of see, okay, does this feel like this is tapping? And I'm tapping on those edges to just make sure that it works, and it does. Okay, so we'll copy that same code, including that padding, for each one of these. And this is where you might want to refactor, but wait a little bit before you refactor. I'm going to have a separate video on that just because there's a lot to think about when we're refactoring, and it takes a little bit of time. So let's go ahead, set up the next one. This one's going to be our email. So we need to make sure that we update the focus field to email. Otherwise, you're going to be like going back and forth if you misclick. And then our last one is going to be our password. So let's just make sure we update that to password. So your code should look like this. You're going to have an on-tap gesture here. You're going to have an on-tap gesture here. And you're going to have an on-tap gesture here. If we go ahead and run this, or if we resume that preview, we should see this relay out. Tapping on the start is now responsive, and we can do that in the actual app. I can tap on the edges and it will switch. There are some constraints breaking. This is a bug. I reported this. I don't know what's going on. It looks like it's been doing this since iOS 17. I'm not sure it's fixed on iOS 18. I need to update one of my devices to iOS 18 so I can actually try that out. So far, I've only been working with the simulators. Okay, so that is how to fix the tappability. The key thing to keep in mind here is that we're using the clip shape, or you can use the content shape, which will allow you to use a rectangle to make that region fully tappable. All right, so next up, we're going to customize this a little bit more. And the only way you can see this is if you actually bring up a keyboard. So you won't see this in preview, but this return button, I showed a demo where we were customizing that button. And then I was also showing you where we can tap on content and it gives us suggestions based on that content. So here it's suggesting passwords, but it's not really suggesting a whole lot like it was when we first demoed it. And to get that functionality, we're going to be customizing both the return button and we're going to customize the I think I must have copied something wrong. Okay, we're going to customize the content type and we're going to customize the submit label. So those are the two things that we're going to add right here. So content type, text content type. If you don't type that first, it doesn't work. And then here we're going to do name. So that's going to match my full name. That's for the name text field that we're working on. Then for the email text field, we're going to append the text content type, and this is going to be email address. And then for the secure field, we're going to set the text content type. I guess because it's a different type, it's giving me different suggestions, but this one we have two options for password. Since this is a create account screen, we want to do a new password. If it was an existing password, we would just do normal password. So that's going to set up the content, which is going to help us with those keyboard suggestions that appear above the keyboard. So these are the suggestions that appear here. Right now, the only one that I'm seeing is when I'm here, it's showing me passwords, but it's not suggesting an email address. So this will fix that. But before we test that, let's just go ahead and customize the submit label. So the submit label is going to be that return button in the keyboard in the bottom right of my screen. So that's going to be this right here. And here we have a bunch of different options. We can't customize this fully. These are the only ones that we have. So by default, it's return. I'm going to make the first two next. And then I'm going to make this last one. I think I'm going to just go with go. But you can choose whichever one you want. So join or go, I think, make the most sense. Or continue. I could be convinced for continue. Let's go with continue. Awesome. So let's go ahead and test this on a real device. Bring up my iPhone. And we tap on the name text field. Now it's suggesting my name. If you're running this on your iPhone, you should see your name or whatever contact card is associated. I'll hit the next button. You'll notice that that gets rid of the keyboard. It actually doesn't take me to the next text field, which is another little optimization that we'll do in a second. I'll tap on email. It's suggesting my personal email. And then for the password, it's still suggesting an email, but that's because I don't have an associated domain to this application, which requires setting up a special file on my computer server that validates that this is my app and that I own it. So I don't have that set up for this demo, and I'm not going to go into the details of that because that's a lot of work that's unrelated to this specific task. So now that we have that, if I start typing this password, I see I have a continue button, and I can hit continue. And that will trigger, and you'll notice that this prints out my name and email. So that's kind of the final step for that create account button. It's going to print that stuff out. So how do we get it to advance to the next one? We've worked on the focus, but now we want the focus to shift as we're using the application. In order to do that, we're going to use the onSubmit, and this will allow us to shift the focus. So all we need to do is the same type of stuff that we've done before with the focused field is we set the next attribute that we want to be focused. So for the name, we want the password to be the next focus since that's logically the one that's below it. And we'll do this same style of code for each of these. So down here, we have the focus field is going to be equal to, did I do that wrong? I did that wrong. This first one should be email. And then this second one should be password. All right. So name should go to email. Email should go to password. And password, another power user thing is we want that to actually cause the action for create account. So let's add one more down here. And we're not going to shift the focus. It's going to automatically remove focus when we press that button on the keyboard. But we want to do the action. And that action is the same. Oh, I already have an on submit for this. So we actually already are set up to do this. We just need to make sure that this is going to do the same action as this button. And to do that, I'm going to create a new function here called create account. This is going to allow me to have any UI specific code. And I'm going to move this print into create account for right now. And then we're going to call this method create account from the button. And we're going to also call it from the on submit right here. So that way there's two places that are using the same exact code and we're not going to miss something. So if I press the return button, if I tap on this keyboard and I press continue, which you cannot see, let me take a screenshot and maybe we can look. Nope, even the screenshot won't show this keyboard. Yeah, I literally cannot show you it, but you can see it when you test it yourself. Okay, so that is good to go. Next, what I want to do is I want to add some logic in here that's going to either create the account or not create the account on the model object. So we've got a user validator object. We're going to have another method here called create account. This is actually going to do all of the business logic. That's outside the scope of this demo. So just to sort of showcase this, I'm actually going to cut this code from our create account and then just paste it here. And then we'll just delete this. So that should still work. And then we'll jump back over to this method. So I'm back in my login view. So I was just in the user validator. I want to have some logic here that's going to manage. What do I need to manage? Oh, so this is if you want to, we want to reuse the same logic that is preventing the user from tapping this button. I'm going to use that same type of logic to allow us to call the user validators create account. I don't want to call it if there's not good input. Otherwise, we have this error case, and I'm just going to print a message for right now. This is kind of an exercise for you. You will want to present something to the user. Okay, so that's going to give us some kind of output. We go ahead and run this. And if I just tap the submit button without any content, we should see this error message print out. So if I go next, we see we advance, continue, and we see this error condition prints out. Okay, so the keyboard is dismissed. The last thing I want to show you is how we can have a spinning property. This is kind of just a little bit of flair that I wanted to put into the application. For this, I'm just going to add one more property, and that is going to be creating, I'll call it is creating account is equal to true. And this is to simulate a web call. Right now, it's just going to be indefinite. And all we're going to do is in create account, we're going to just say is creating account is equal to true. This will flip the switch for us. And then we'll listen for this in our UI and customize our button here. So for this button, what we're going to do is we're going to say if the user is creating an account, then we want to show a progress view. And this is just going to be an infinite spinner. Else, we're going to show the create account button in bold. And then it will resize. So one of the tricks that I use for this type of thing is I use the group. And that allows me to group up the if-else conditions. And then I can set a minimum size, minimum width. And I'm going to set this just to something like 200. So doing this, we now should be able to see a button that will maintain its width on that iPhone app. If I go ahead, enter some of this stuff, hit next, enter my email, and now start typing something. Oh, we have a problem. The button's already spinning and it's not active. But once we have enough, we can bring that up. So I set this to the wrong value. I set it to true. I want this to be false. So with this, I tap the suggestion, I hit next. It suggests an email. I hit next. Now the email one, it actually advanced, which is kind of interesting, while the suggested name, it didn't advance. So it gave me the opportunity to potentially correct the name, but it didn't give me that opportunity with the email, which is kind of interesting. And now it's letting me type the password. So if I just type something, we activate that button. And if I hit the continue button, or if I hit the create account, it should do the same action. So continue, and the keyboard goes away, and then it starts spinning. At this point, you would do your call to make the user account, and then you would transition to another screen. All right, so that is a little bit of working with the keyboard. We learned about the focus state. So we talked about how we can create a focus. If you have multiple elements in your form, you can switch between those different elements just by setting it using the @FocusState property modifier. And setting this to nil will clear it out, which would get the keyboard to disappear. You really want to test these things on a real device, because the keyboard sort of user experience is best felt when you're actually using a real device, not on the simulator, not in the preview. So that's going to be your best focus. Remember, if we're working around bugs because your design wants to use a non-standard design for your text fields, then you're potentially going to need a workaround. For this, we used a tap gesture to make the tap region a little bit bigger, so users are not frustrated that when they're tapping, it's not clicking on the thing that they expect. And then we customized the content type, we customized the return button label, and we customized it so that we could go to the next element. So that's a little tour of working with a login screen using the new observation framework that we designed in the video before this, and setting up all the keyboard stuff with FocusState. I hope this was helpful. If you want this final source code, I'm going to commit it and post it, and you can go ahead and use the link down below to grab it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to get more tutorials on SwiftUI and iOS development and related topics. And then hit the like button if this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.